Hello and welcome back to Medium Rare. My name is Rag Reynolds and today we have 4 stories to talk about. So the first thing we're talking about today is an update to the Bashur story we spoke about before. If you're not already aware, on the 3rd of February, Bashur, aka Toasty Time, put out some tweets saying this: "It's obvious my career is dead, I've lost my life, I've lost my wife, I've lost everything. I thought I could recover from the slander that happened to me years ago, but honestly it's too much. My wife was my rock, I have no reason to be here anymore." Followed up saying, "Leaving this world I never asked to be in to begin with, I will leave you with this. The world needs dreamers and the world needs doers, but above all, the world needs dreamers who do. I hope there's something more after this life. I had a feeling I wouldn't make it that far." And when we spoke about this story last, we kind of ended it there. There were some rumors going around. Some people had said that Bashur had been admitted into hospital, but that had not been confirmed at the time. However, on the 7th of February, Bashur did follow up his previous tweets saying, "I've been released from the hospital. I'm okay, I'm still recovering, but after I rest a bit, I'll talk about what I experienced. I'm going to breathe, play with my cat, and take a second chance at life for a minute. Thank you all for the outpouring of support." And then a couple of days after that, Bashur tweeted again saying, "So freaking stoked about life. I've never felt so driven to start living. Never let fear dictate your direction. Don't give your heart to those who don't deserve it. Focus on what you're passionate about. I'm awake, I'm aware my time here is limited, not wasting it any longer." And that is where this comes to an end. So it does look like Bashur has gone from being in a very bad place, and now it looks like he's in a better place. I mean, you never really know when you're looking at someone's tweets. He could be saying all this just for show. You never really know. But if we are to take all this at face value, it certainly does seem as though he is in a better place now. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this in those comments down below. And the next thing we're talking about is another update on the Wuhan coronavirus situation. The disease finally has an official name. It is now being called COVID-19. But more important than that is that, unfortunately, infection numbers and deaths have continued and continued to grow, and they are still growing at this time. In the last few days, we've seen a GP based in the UK in Brighton close after a member of staff tested positive for the virus. We've even seen Singapore's biggest bank evacuate 300 staff members from its head office as a precautionary measure. Currently, confirmed cases are sitting at just under 60,000 people, with the death toll coming in at over 1,300. What's also worrying is that tests for coronavirus aren't seeming to be all that reliable. We can see here there are a number of cases in which people with coronavirus initially test negative. In Tianjin, health officials say a woman developed symptoms on January 25th. Her tests on February 5th, 8th and 10th came back as negative. The test on February 12th was positive for coronavirus. Now obviously that is very concerning that these tests aren't even always accurate. I mean, there have been so many people who have been suspected as having this virus, but they've been tested and it's come back negative. How many of these people have slipped through the cracks and gone on to infect other people with the virus because their tests said that no, they did not have it? This is quite concerning. And I know there's a lot of people still out there who think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, people are blowing it out of proportion, yada yada, the flu is worse, all the rest of it. I'm not one of those people. I am more and more concerned about this the more and more I hear about this. Just when you look at the current culture and climate in China, when you look at how the Chinese people are reacting to this with streets, busy streets in China that were once overpopulated are now running basically empty. People are abandoning the streets, they're staying indoors, businesses are closing down. People in China are obviously very concerned and this thing's spreading, so I think we're right to be concerned about it as well. However, as I keep saying in my previous videos, I also think it's important not to mass panic, not to overreact to these sort of things. It's important to stay level-headed. Don't think, oh, we're all going to die. It's more just important to keep up to date with what's going on and be aware of what's going on. Be careful. Don't be taking any sudden trips to China, right into Wuhan or anything. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this in those comments down below. And our next story today is Democratic presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg has been contacting meme accounts on social media to help him with his campaign. You can see here some examples of memes that have been created for Mike Bloomberg's campaign for president. It seems that Bloomberg is trying to sweep up some demographics by appealing to the younger voters, trying to appeal to them using memes. Bloomberg has faced criticism for many people over this, and he has faced widespread criticism in general for the way he has handled the marketing of his campaign. One such person that has criticised him has been Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders. Sanders has said that he has a problem with Bloomberg, who is a billionaire, thinking that he can buy the election. Bloomberg is someone who has by far outspent all of the other candidates, spending $300 million on ads for his campaign, with $45 million of those dollars being specifically for digital ads. Anyway, I'd like to pass this off to you. What do you think about Mike Bloomberg? Do you think that this is a desperate boomer attempt at trying to relate to kids and relate to the younger voters to try and make himself a little more popular, kind of steal that younger vote away from Bernie Sanders? Do you think this is a good move, or do you think it's just very cringe and, as Bernie says, he's just trying to buy the election? Let me know in those comments down below. And the last thing we're talking about today is a debate on transgender athletes. So last month, debate sparked around comedian and podcast host Joe Rogan. People had been bringing up some old comments from back in 2013 that Joe Rogan had made towards transgender MMA fighter Fallon Fox. Fallon Fox is a transgender woman. They are someone who has transitioned from being a man to a woman, and it also just so happens that they are a mixed martial arts fighter. Back in 2013, Rogan was quoted on his Joe Rogan Experience podcast calling Fallon Fox an effing man. He was all around outraged that Fox was allowed to compete in women's divisions in mixed martial arts. And here is the full quote. She calls herself a woman, but I tend to disagree. And she used to be a man, but now she's a transgender, which is the official term that means you've gone through it, right? And she wants to be able to fight women in MMA. I say no effing way. I say if you had a dick at one point in time, you also have all the bone structure that comes with having a dick. You have bigger hands, you have bigger shoulder joints. You're an effing man. That's a man, okay? You can't have that. I don't care if you don't have a dick anymore. Now, the reason this has actually all been brought back up was because on a recent episode of Joe Rogan's podcast, Joe Rogan had said that he would probably be voting for Bernie Sanders in the upcoming election. Sanders' campaign used this seeming endorsement as a campaign promotion tool. And this ended up giving Sanders a lot of backlash from critics of Joe Rogan, who had been claiming that Joe Rogan's past comments meant that he was transphobic. And now we're talking about this yet again after Ethan Klein of H3H3 put out a tweet saying, genuine question, is it considered transphobic to think that people born biologically male that have transitioned to female should not compete against females in competitive sports? He followed this up saying, and if you think it's transphobic, then do you acknowledge that they may have an unfair competitive advantage? If so, what's the solution? And in response to this, we saw a lot of different creators and people across social media come out to give their opinions. We saw transgender YouTuber Blair White say no, it's common sense. We saw Gibby say no, but there's a lot of opinions on the topic and a lot of transphobic people love to hide behind this as an argument. The problem is there's no solution right now, but no one's concerned with finding a solution or caring. A potential option is changing sports categories to something that isn't gendered, but having a biological advantage is something that's very interesting in athletics. Look up Caster Semenya. It's effed up that they won't let her compete as a woman. Michael Phelps has an insane physical advantage because his body weirdly doesn't produce lactic acid. Why is his biological advantage fine? Most Olympic athletes clearly have biological advantage, but no one wants to talk about this because it's too complicated, so it's all gendered because it's easy to fight about. Matt Shee says no, and if it is, then I'll just have to accept being called that. Sports are divided based on sex, not gender. Someone else says, a male that was built up with testosterone his whole life to decide to become a woman to compete is just unrealistic. I do not understand how this is even a debate. Dr. Destiny says no, but delusional people will say yes. We have someone else saying it's genuinely unfair due to hormones, but there's also women that are born with abnormally high testosterone levels and men with low. I think it would make sense to stop separating sports by gender and instead have classes based on weight, height, hormone levels, etc. And now, as far as my opinion on all of this, I am very much on the side that I think it is wrong for transgender athletes, people who have gone from male to female, to then compete against women. And I think it also depends on what the sport actually is. So for example, when it comes back to the Joe Rogan example, when Joe Rogan's talking about MMA, when you're talking about combat sports, I think it is vital that you cannot have these transgender athletes competing against other women. There you have someone who was a man, who, as Joe Rogan says, someone who has that bone structure, who has the hands, who grew up their whole life with this testosterone in their body and all the rest of it. When they go in there and fight against a woman, there is something that to me just doesn't sit right. And especially when you're seeing someone get knocked unconscious and you see the transgender athlete, who was previously a male, is now knocking out other women over and over again. I think this is something that is seriously unfair and something that is also damaging to the health of the people who sign on to fight against these transgender athletes. However, when it comes to something, say, like swimming or something like running, or you're doing the high jump and stuff like that, I still think there's an unfair advantage, but I think it's a different kind of advantage. I'm not as adverse to that. I personally still think it's important and we should separate men from women, but there isn't that extra added aspect of someone maybe getting hurt because of that unfair advantage. I get what people are saying in some of these responses where they say that Michael Phelps, for example, he's got a biological advantage, or you get NBA players and they've got biological advantages with their heights and all that. I understand that these people often have different advantages, so I get what they're saying by why do we separate men from women and we don't separate tall people from short people. I understand their sort of line of thinking, but I also think that it's not quite the same thing. It comes back to the point that, yes, sometimes you can get a woman who's stronger than a lot of men, or you do get a man who is weaker than a lot of other women. You do get that. You get women who are maybe biologically overperforming, and you get men who are maybe biologically underperforming. That is a genuine thing, but that is such a small amount of people. That is the minority, and I don't think you can create rules and divisions based on the minority of individuals. I think when you're making these divisions, when you're making these rules, you don't need to look at people like Michael Phelps. You don't need to look at the best NBA players. What you should be looking at are the average people, the people in the middle, the people like you and I, assuming that you and I are the average. Take the average man, take the average woman. The average man is stronger, the average man is faster. It is an unfair matchup. Take two average men, they will both be roughly the same height. When you start saying, oh, what about dividing by height instead of gender? Just because a woman and a man are the same height doesn't suddenly mean that they don't have any other biological differences. There are many. Anyway, as far as a solution for that, I'm not sure what it is. I mean, I'm happy to see that other people are maybe thinking about, oh, maybe we need to go by height or go by this, but I don't think that height is the answer. I don't think that hormone levels is the answer. They're not practical ways of splitting up divisions of people, and I'm not really sure I'm on board with that. I do think that the split between men and women is probably the most simple and effective way of separating sports divisions. Where does that leave trans people? I honestly do not know, but it's certainly something worth having a discussion about. And as far as whether or not someone is transphobic for thinking trans people shouldn't compete against women or compete against men or whatever it is, I don't think that's transphobic at all. I think that's just being realistic about what's fair and what isn't fair. I don't think it's fair to take someone who was a man before, who may still have certain physical advantages, and then have other women be forced to compete against that person. I don't think it's fair on the women. But hey, this is just my opinion. Let me know what you think in those comments down below. I am interested in hearing what other people think. Please answer Ethan's Twitter question in those comments as well. What do you think the solution is? How can we incorporate transgender athletes into the mix without making it unfair for women at the same time? And that is where I'm going to end today's video. So please be sure to let me know what you thought about any and all of the topics we talked about in today's video in those comments down below. Make sure to leave a like on this video if you liked it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on those notification bells. Also check out my Patreon if you feel like supporting the channel, as my videos are often demonetized. Also check out my social media and all the rest of my links in that description down below. And until next time everyone, my name is Rag Reynolds and this was Medium Rare.